EduMagicians, welcome to the EduMagic podcast with your host, Dr. Sam Fessich. Dr. Sam is a professor of education, author of EduMagic, and a pumpkin spice latte fan. This podcast is designed for pre-service teachers. Remember, friends, teaching doesn't begin at graduation, but during that first class at 8 a.m. Let's get this party started.
Hi, I'm Jen Giffen from Shooks and Gift the podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey EduMagicians, it's Sam, and before we start into this episode, I want to share with you about an amazing resource. It's called the Educator Candidate Member Portal. AAEE provides you with resources such as virtual job fairs, a job board, interview tips and prep, resume building, webinars. You can even get a copy of the job search handbook digitally. So head on over to aaee.org and create your free Educator Candidate Member account today. Friends, one more thing before we get started. This episode is brought to you by my new course, Digital Portfolios from Scratch to Interview Ready. Head on over to sfessich.com/courses for more information about this self-paced, hands-on virtual workshop. Hello, EduMagicians, and welcome back to another episode of the EduMagic podcast. My name is Dr. Sam Fessich, and today I have with me two amazing educators from New Jersey, Nicole and Darlene. You might know them from NJTeacher2Teacher over on Instagram. That's how we met. That's how we connected, and I'm so honored to have them on the show today. Hey, Nicole. Hey, Darlene. Welcome to the show.
Sam? Hi, Sam. We're so excited to be here.
Woohoo! So excited to have you guys here. Love the energy, and I know my listeners are going to love this too. So tonight we're talking about co-teaching, but before we even get into that, let's talk about your teaching journey. Who would like to go first?
I guess I'll take it away. I'm Darlene, and I was a teacher in the Woodbridge Public School for about 13 years. I always joke, give or take a few years in and out of maternity leaves, because we've all been there as working moms. And was an elementary school teacher for about 13 years. Had an awesome experience. A little shout out to Ross Street School number 11.
Awesome. And Nicole, what about you? What's your teaching story?
Yeah, hi there. My classroom experience was basically, the majority of it was in East Brunswick, New Jersey, as both elementary and a middle school teacher. I did a couple little stints here and there in Union Township and a couple of other places, but most of my experience has been right there in good old East Brunswick.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what's your current role in education, ladies? What are you currently doing to help support teachers?
Oh my goodness. So we had an experience together, Nicole, 17 years ago. We actually met in a workshop, and we were two moms and a dream. So we were the original Shark Tank. We left the classroom. We started our own company because our desire was to really work with teachers and train them in best practices. And we started our own company called
NJTeacher2Teacher, and that's where we got our name, because we started doing workshops through actually Rutgers. And ironically, Darlene and I are both literacy consultants when we're out in the field, but we started our journey doing some math professional development through Rutgers, both of us on maternity leave. We met a lot of great people, teachers and administrators, and after those sessions, people would come up to us and they would say, hey, can you do some PD in my district? Can you do some PD on this topic? And because we were two teachers who left the classroom, we called ourselves NJTeacher2Teacher.
I love it. That's awesome. That's so cool. So how long have you guys been doing this professional development and workshops and things like that?
Yes, in 2005 we started, and we thought when we began our company, we would go back to the classroom after 2 or 3 years. The children got a little bit more, let's just say, manageable. But honestly, the business exploded because we feel our success came that we are, and actually just effective teachers. We support good practices, the latest and greatest research, the State Department education standards. We don't have a product to sell. So we don't go out there and beg and plead or spin and do cartwheels to get you to buy our product. We support teachers, whether you're a first-year teacher, whether you're coming out of college, or whether you're seasoned, because we know teachers are awesome and we just like to praise and polish.
Oh, I love that phrase, praise and polish. Ooh, I'm going to have to use that.
So our accidental journey has taken many different courses and roads. We do professional development workshops, we do coaching, we do curriculum writing. Basically, we have this team of fabulous consultants that have expertise in different areas. And aside from Darlene and I going out in the field and doing what we love, and co-teaching is one of those things, we have a great team of consultants that bring that teacher-to-teacher experience into school districts across the state.
That's awesome. I love it. I know I'm so excited to go and learn more about New Jersey Teacher to Teacher, but we're going to talk more about that later in the show, where we can connect with you and find all these great workshops and PD opportunities. But tonight we're talking all about co-teaching, my friends. Now, it sounds like the two of you got that on lock, but let's break it down. What is co-teaching?
Absolutely, absolutely. So in my years of experience in my classroom, I had the most amazing colleague, Maureen Carson, and honestly, I taught the last 6 years of my career in a co-teaching situation. And the reason why we love working with co-teachers is because we love supporting the two amazing professionals in the room. So to define it, just that, when two certified, educated professionals work together in one space, and they are in it for the full set of the students, for the successes and the shortcomings of every child in that room. We don't want children to see, oh, that's my teacher or that's your teacher. Co-teaching, collaborative, cooperation, communication, responsible for the education of every child in that room.
I love that. I love that whole definition. I love how you broke it down. I like to tell my students when we talk about co-teaching, it's not your students and my students. It's our students. It's our class. We're working together to reach and teach all of our students. Now, when you say two certified amazing teachers, do you mean like one certified in special education, one certified in elementary or middle or secondary? Working together like that, or is that something different?
So very interesting, because in our journey over the years, I would say the initial thought is it is a general education certificate with another teacher who has that special ed certification. But through the years, there's been a push for, listen, we need to support these children. So our training has gone to basic skills teachers, intervention teachers. One time we even trained the media specialist. We wanted everybody to realize when these children are in your room, I'm the general ed teacher, you're the media specialist, we're working in a nonfiction book report or nonfiction writing, we can co-teach to get these children where they need to be.
Yeah, I think too often we saw so many times the professionals not being used to their full capability. Whatever professional it was that came in the room, like Darlene mentioned, even the ELL coordinator, how can we effectively use both professionals? Because while some have strengths in content, others have strengths in strategy. So it really started as an inclusion term, co-teaching, and we have been asked time and time again to take that inclusion piece and broaden it outside of that, out of that special education, general education setting. So the original definition of co-teaching is that inclusion, co-teaching situation, but we have greatly expanded that to multiple models with multiple different professionals.
Yeah, it is definitely each individual certified, experienced, trained professional.
Right. And oftentimes some co-teaching isn't always going to be 50-50, nor should it be when it comes to planning, content delivery, feedback, assessment, all those things. I like how you said every teacher needs to be giving 100% of themselves in that classroom. So when we talk about co-teaching and say, we do have a few first-year teachers listening in on the show, how do we even go about building a relationship with a co-teacher, if we are just getting into the classroom and we've never worked with a co-teacher before and we are assigned a co-teacher, how do we even begin to build that relationship of trust, of support, of having that 100%, we're both all in and these are all of our students?
Very important question. And I focus around, we've been doing this a long time, and that word relationship is really essential. And sometimes Darlene and I feel like when we're in a session with co-teachers, we're actually in a therapy or a counseling session, because if the relationship doesn't have a strong foundation, and we say all the time, our co-teachers don't need to be the best of friends. It doesn't have to be that way, but they do need to have a professional working relationship. So yeah, and it's important to, we work as well with teachers, as much with teachers as we do with administrators. And it's really important, first of all, for administrators to understand that it is important to be mindful of the pairs that you're putting together, their strengths, their shortcomings, what it is their passions are, what they feel is their philosophy on co-teaching. So it's essential from the get-go to think about the pairs and what they're going to bring to the table. So that relationship starts actually before the pairs are even selected. And then, we feel the personal connection is very important, but early on to foster that relationship, we need our co-teachers to be thinking about what is their philosophy of teaching and learning, right? What do they feel is most important in a successful classroom, both for general education students and also our special education students, and putting those two things together to get a broader picture of inclusion. And laying those things out there in the beginning and talking through them is essential. The belief system has to be intact. We need to make sure we have parity between the two educators. And if we start that work from the very beginning, then we have the strong foundational relationship to build off of. It's important that both teachers think about what has worked in their co-teaching settings, if they've been there before, what has not worked. And if they're both new to co-teaching, it's a beautiful thing because they get to build their ideal classroom together.
I love that. And when you first started out talking, you're like, well, sometimes it's like a therapy session, and it really is like a real relationship that you have with a coworker, but it's deeper than that. This is the person that's going to support, encourage, challenge, and just be that constant in your classroom. And it really is a co-teaching relationship. It's not a my kids, your kids type thing. So if we're working through some of that mindset shift, which some of us may have to make as new teachers or as veteran educators, how do we even go about changing our mindset from, oh, I'm not trained in special ed, or, oh, I'm not trained in math? How do we go about changing that up, changing that script?
I think too, like when we're in professional development, that sometimes we get co-teachers that are finishing each other's sentence. And we'll open all of our workshops when we do professional development with just some trust building activities and some kind of going out of your comfort zones. They write song lyrics or they engage in some sort of partnership activity, which gets them kind of breaking down, relaxing, and getting to know each other.
I also think a part of it, if you think about this, you have new teachers coming out of college with a wealth of information just around technology. And let's just pretend or create a scenario where you have this very young, energetic teacher with perhaps big dreams and hopes, right? And working now with a teacher who's a little more seasoned, perhaps been doing things my way for 30 years. And this energy of this was me, believe me, and I still might have it, I hope. This energy now wants to come in and change the world and do all these great new things. It's a little scary to the teacher who's been in this classroom for a long time. So we really try to do some journal writing between the pairs. We often have them write letters to each other. What is your hope and dream? What is your goal for the students? What is your goal as a new teacher entering this co-teaching situation? And also, what are your fears? So along the lines of that therapy, we have to hear from each of them. I'm afraid that you're going to come in here and take over my classroom. I'm afraid you're not going to let me in to try new things. So we try in our workshops to really open lines of communication, that it is okay to be fearful. It is okay, though, to be excited. And we really do try to preach that this is a benefit for not only the children, but for the two educators in the room.
We've had tears in our workshops.
Oh, yes.
We've had people opening up about things, and we'll have them, like you asked, for example, one of the things that we'll have them share something your co-teacher doesn't even know about you, or your colleagues don't even know about you. And, sometimes even between the pairs that have been together for a substantial amount of time, they don't have that background knowledge on. And it just is like, even for the teachers that have been together, it's a nice reset to have those conversations and do those fun pieces.
One of my favorite memories, let me say, is at the end of our workshop, we give them the acrostic with the letters co-teaching. And at the end of our time together, work with your colleague, create a poem, create a song, create a story, or just put a little phrase or two next to the co-teaching. This one couple did a rap song, and we videoed, and they were dancing. And the one gentleman teacher did like the worm on the ground, but they had a whole rap at the end of our session on what co-teaching meant to them now. So that was fun too, as a way to engage the pairs.
Now, if we think back earlier in our conversation, we talked about both teachers giving 100%. Not you do half this, and I'll do a little bit of this, and maybe we'll come together. It'll be like 98%. But both teachers giving 100%. I know when it comes to co-teaching experiences, it can seem like that work is not divided equally or evenly. So I think sometimes there's a need for that. Sometimes there's not. So how do you go about working through the workload when it comes to co-teaching, whether it's with planning, delivering, assessment, feedback? How do you go through balancing that workload with your co-teacher?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the important part there is communication. We have to establish boundaries. We've had situations where the teacher says, it's 3:15, I'm done. And the other teacher's like, can I call you? Can I text you? And now with the circumstances of our environment, we actually have the beauty of Zooming each other. So I would think it's really strong communication. Most principals are very aware that teachers need the time to plan. Is it always enough? No. But there usually is a common planning time. You have to communicate with your colleague. Are you willing to give up your lunch hour? Are you willing to stay once a week until 4 p.m.? And sometimes I know it's asking a lot, but most of the time teachers are very generous with their time, willing to put in the time, willing to give 15 minutes extra here or there. We have seen co-teachers work through text messages, Google Docs, shared lesson plans, and really creating a common way. How are we going to divide and conquer? It's not always 50-50, as you said. And sometimes it is. Listen, I felt like I led the social studies unit this time. I would love the opportunity to grade those papers. You did such a great job with setting up the math learning centers in the room. Can we create an exit ticket together so we can assess those learning centers? So it really is just time to communicate and be respectful of the time. And to that, the 6 co-teaching models, once a pair actually knows that there are 6 models to co-teach, once they even identify and realize there are 6 researched models, it takes away some of that pressure and some of that workload and some of that planning time, let's say.
And we've been, with teachers of all grade levels, and a couple of things to ease that workload we've tried to talk to teachers about is, regardless of what you believe your responsibility is, you really should know the content of your grade level. So if you're in a novel study, you should read that novel. Whether or not you're going to plan the whole class lesson, you certainly are going to have to differentiate for your students. So you need to be aware of the content. And also the strategies that are involved. We talk about the, general education teacher being the content expert and the special education teacher being a strategy expert. And regardless of what their particular role is for that day or that lesson, understanding standards, understanding content, and not, just assuming they're only responsible for their portion is essential. And then the other thing that we work with with upper grade teachers is really thinking about, and this comes up a lot of times, sometimes the difficulty and challenges with co-teaching and the workload is that teachers don't have a good sense of best practices for instruction, never mind best practices for co-teachers, but just what can we do? Can we have a do now, and who can organize that? Followed by modeling, followed by guided practice. But can we break down the block into effective instructional models and then divide and conquer that way?
I think what you had mentioned about not just being, for the special ed teacher, not just being a strategy specialist, but also knowing that content, knowing the standards for that grade level, understanding, the whatever that chapter is going to be about, and be able to contribute to that is so important. And then also from the general ed teacher's perspective, understanding ways to come at that with different instructional models is so important for both of these educators to communicate, to share those documents, to share those folders, to share their time together, and have that be a successful classroom and focusing on the students, because that's the main goal there. It's not about you and me, it's about our students.
That's right. Absolutely.
So somebody, I believe it was Darlene, you had mentioned 6 models of co-teaching. Would you mind, I'll give you a beat, not just kidding, but can you break down these 6 models of co-teaching, what they are, what they're about, and maybe like a little example or two?
Yeah, so then Nicole and I maybe will do a little tag teaming here. So one teach, one drift. One teach, one drift, a default model. It is one of the research-based models. It is very successful when it is done right. And in a nutshell, one leads the lesson. One has taken the lead in that I am standing up front, I am delivering the instruction. The other one drifts around and among students, not just to tap on a shoulder and say, pay attention, but to really assess, keep students engaged, look at the teacher, look at the students, make a little eye contact with the teacher, naturally and authentically interject. For example, I might say, Mrs. Pepe, I think I heard you say that we should be on 35 in the math book. Is that correct? So I am tuning her and cueing her into, I'm looking at students and we're all not with you, Mrs. Pepe. So one teach, one drift is an effective model, but it's the default model because when there's no training, when teachers are new at this, they don't know what to do. Usually a special ed teacher is just running into the room, stands in the back, doesn't know what to do, and just kind of hovers around. I'm doing air quotes, students. So one teach, one drift is effective when done correctly.
And ideally, that one teach, one drift kind of bounces in and out of teacher responsibility. So, we want to see both teachers kind of engage in that role. Another model, and of course we have to give credit where credit is due. Professors and authors Lynn Cook and Marilyn Friend were the original namesayers of these different models. One teach, one observe. That is a unique co-teaching model in which there has been a prior conversation, a prior discussion, a problem that has come into practice, and we need to address a certain student or a certain method of instruction. So ahead of time, the co-teachers will determine, hey, this student, they look like they're gazing out after a couple of minutes. They're not focused. Maybe something else is going on. Let's do an engagement inventory. Or, hey, I just went through a professional development. I learned a new strategy. I'm going to teach it. Can you observe? And could you jot down the type of questions that I'm asking? I want to make sure I'm asking higher level questions. And would put the co-teachers in a one teach, one observe scenario. Now, we don't want to see that regularly, and we don't really even want to see that for the entire lesson, however long that is. But it is an option that's there, and it's a great option for professional development and also for student support as needed.
Let's get another one in here. So my favorite one is the parallel model. And when we talk about the workload, I think this one, teachers can breathe a little easy. The parallel model is literally teaching the same lesson on the same page, but in your own fashion and your own teaching style. Students have learning styles, auditory, visual, kinesthetic, but so do teachers. So when I said that this one requires perhaps less workload, I may text my colleague here, Mrs. Pepe, and say, sorry, we didn't get to chat today. Math lesson page 143 tomorrow. I know her now so well. She is so tech savvy. She loves iPads. She loves websites. So when she comes in tomorrow, she's doing math page 143. We can cut that class right in half just by saying, hey, you 12 come here and I'll take these 12. I know, surefire bet. She has iPads going. She's got websites, and these kids are doing technology. Me, I'm doing math page 143, but I have colorful yarn, construction paper, glue and scissors. Very visual, very colorful. I'm a little artsy. And we're doing the same lesson, but we're doing it in a way that benefits children because they see me today this way. They visit Mrs. Pepe on another day, but they are getting the benefits of our teaching styles. While the two co-teachers, we didn't have to do much planning on this. We didn't have to do much collaborative planning. We did it at home on our own time because we just had to show up for the parallel lesson.
And we've created essentially those two smaller class sizes. We've divided the students in half, and now there's more accountability and more opportunity for participation in those two parallel groups.
Yeah.
All right, our fourth co-teaching model we're going to talk about is the alternative group, the alternative teaching group. And this is a model that I think is present in most classrooms because it does have so many possibilities. An alternative group is where you have a learning situation that the teacher will instruct the whole group or teach to the whole group, and a small group will be pulled either out of that lesson for different content and different instruction, or after that lesson for a scaffold or an additional instruction, or even an extension. And that's why we love this model, because we don't just talk about the students that might need additional support and scaffolding. This is a great model for our gifted students as well. So the teacher will work on a specialized set of needs. They may enrich, reteach, reinforce. Hopefully in that alternative group, the teacher is using data that will inform their instruction from prior assessments and formative assessments. And that group, we want to be flexible and dynamic. So it's really important that our alternative teaching model doesn't always have the same students in that particular small group. That's key.
Okay, so another goodie and favorite of mine is station teaching. So it's different than learning centers, not to be confused with learning centers. So station teaching, the instruction occurs with one of the groups being led by one of the co-teachers, a second station or group by the second co-teacher, and it is instructional. The third one is an independent station. So when we say instruction, this is another beautiful part of these models. Again, I get to work with 1/3 of my class, increasing student engagement, decreasing misbehaving, and I get to bring my strengths, my talents. Again, whether I'm a new teacher right out of college or I've been teaching in the classroom for a long time, a little planning is needed for this one. So let's do a social studies model, for example. We're in a unit of social studies. I take 6 to 8 children, 1/3 of the class. And guess what? That textbook is very difficult for readers at this level in my room. And me and these students, we just read a few pages. but we get into some good reading strategies. We're annotating, we're using Reader's Notebook, we're looking up vocabulary. Mrs. Pepe and I decided that a written response using evidence from the text is also important to prepare for state testing. So she is working with a second group on almost like a response that you would find on our New Jersey Student Learning Standard Assessment. And the third group, they're actually playing a game that we found on a website on that social studies content. And we've taught them and we've instructed them, and we have went through the routine of what do you do when you're at the computer? How do you work with your partners there? So we have set them up to be independent. Now, station teaching. I have the group. My colleague and I decided, listen, today we're going to need 30 minutes. So we rotate after 30 minutes, but the class time is only, the class time is really not, 90 minutes. So we decide we're going to rotate just once today, and maybe another day in the week we'll do that third rotation.
Interesting thing is, to reiterate, it's new content. It's not, like stations Darlene mentioned, it's not station teaching. We are using this important model to break down initial teaching of important content. And I think that's essential in the stations teaching model because we're creating this small group atmosphere again.
Absolutely.
Another great one you can plan individually. As long as you know the objectives, you can, plan your instruction the way that best suits you.
And teachers begin, we laugh a little because over the years, Nicole and I have cues, like whether it's a or a, oh, boys and girls, or ladies and gentlemen, or students and friends in the classroom. Let me just check in with Mrs. Pepe. Mrs. Pepe, 2 minutes?
Awesome. And one final model, the team teaching model. And I think this model to be effective really requires a high level of communication, a higher level of planning, because unlike some of the other models, you're not being given the objective and the content and being told to go do it your way. This one is where you're truly collaboratively teaching the lesson. Co-teachers can be seen at the front of the classroom, bouncing the content from one to another, using different models of best practices, and truly finishing each other's sentences for benefit of all the students. I was in a classroom just last week observing 2 co-teachers, and those 2 teachers were fantastic because as they were going through a model and they were talking about symbolism in literature, they were using examples. And when one teacher shared an example, the other teacher was able to pick up on the fact that that example may have been too high level for some of her students. And so therefore, she bounced in there and she shared another synonym, another example that was more relevant to some of the students in the classroom. So being able to hear the other teacher and kind of say right then and there on the spot, what else do I do to, need to do to make the information accessible to all the learners is really a powerful thing.
Yeah, team teaching is literally what Nicole and I are doing right now.
I love that. I love that. Now, if we're doing co-teaching, do we have to pick one model and stay with it for every single lesson, or does it change?
Something Darlene and I do is, after we kind of introduce the models, demo the models within the workshop, we will go into classrooms, and her and I will go together as 2 co-teachers. We'll gather some information from the classroom teachers, and we will model a complete co-teaching lesson in a particular content area. And the great thing about what we're able to do there is to show our teachers and administrators that we're working with in that particular district how essential it is that these models are fluid. So we'll demonstrate 1, 2, 3 models within one particular lesson. And what's great about that is exactly what you said. There's no limits there. And, to try out these models, maybe you're doing one at a time, but when you become more seasoned, you can absolutely bounce in and out of, at least 3 models, I would say, is the minimum for a particular lesson.
We have a saying when we're working with teachers, there are 6 models, but there are 600 possibilities.
I love that. I love that. I know we're just getting into the tip of the iceberg when it comes to co-teaching. What are some resources you have for our listeners today to dive deeper into this topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. As we mentioned earlier, Marilyn Cook and friends who have been authors and professors for quite a long time. They had a couple of editions of a resource called Power of Two. They have been really the pioneers of these different co-teaching models. More recently, resources, the ASCD website, they have publications such as Educational Leadership and also additional books and journal entries that support the co-teaching, not just for teachers, but for administrators as well. Yeah, it's really neat. So Darlene and I, we have published as well. We've worked with the NJEA to publish a review article on co-teaching. And we really, truly believe that we learned so much on what it means to be an effective co-teacher from observing and working in districts across the state. Because who does it better than the teachers that are there every day? So we learn from them, we do interviews, we do surveys, and we gather a lot of actual primary source real-time data just to identify what's working best. And we'll move from district to district. A lot of times we first share kind of research and background and theory, and then what our experience has been. And then what we will do is we'll kind of pollinate everybody with the things that we're learning from the different schools that we're working in.
And that keeps you both so relevant and still have a foot in the classroom, so to speak.
Absolutely. So important, especially, there we go, team teaching at its best, especially with the transition this past year, because we've had many districts come to us and say, not only are we thinking about best practices for virtual teaching, but how about when there's two teachers logged into a Zoom or a Google Meet? How are we most effectively using the breakout rooms or using the practices that we've learned in this new environment? And there are no experts there yet, right? We're just learning. So sharing information, keeping connected, collaborating is essential right now.
All right, my friends, this has been a blast, and I know my listeners are going to want to connect with you. How can we go about learning more about New Jersey Teacher to Teacher and more about our topic tonight, co-teaching?
Oh, absolutely. I would say the first place is our website, which is www.NJTeacher2Teacher.com. It can be the number 2 or the word TO, NJTeacher2Teacher.com. We also are very active on social media, as you mentioned, not only Instagram, we have Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. So we would love for anybody to visit our website. We love working with brand new teachers. Love teachers who are like sponges soaking up new information. So we welcome the opportunity to hear from anybody. That would be fun and most welcoming on our part.
Yeah, we love to chat, message us, go on our social media, and we'll certainly get back to you if you're looking for professional development, either for yourself. One thing that we do is you don't have to come to us individually. Bring a group. We'll organize something for new teachers, their school districts, their administrators. We customize everything that we do so that we can most effectively provide services to you, the individual or the team.
That's awesome. And that's so beautiful. I am so glad you shared your teaching journey with us. I'm honored to hear all about the professional development resources that you have for your groups and your teachers in New Jersey. And I just want to thank you so much for your time tonight, ladies. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This was fun and our pleasure. Thank you so much for having us.
We had a great time. We appreciate the opportunity and hope to be chatting with you again soon.
Absolutely.
And there you have it, EduMagicians. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. For more EduMagic, check out sfessage.com and follow Dr. Sam on Twitter and Instagram @sfessage. Until next time, you have the EduMagic within you.